The sound of church bells echoed through the hall, adorned with white roses. The fine lace dress hugged her silhouette as her eyes sparkled with emotion and nervousness. Emma's world was about to change, but not in the way she had imagined. A message on her father's phone, read just seconds before she was about to walk down the aisle, changed everything. "He's not coming." The groom had run away. But not alone. He had run away with her best friend. Emma looked around. All eyes were on her. Everyone was waiting for her reaction. Would she break down? Would this humiliation mark the end of her story? What they didn't know was that this moment wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of an extraordinary turning point. Emma had always been a determined woman. Raised by hard-working parents, she believed in love, loyalty, and the power of shared dreams. She and Ryan had been engaged for 15 years, but they had never lived together. Each still lived with their parents, caught in a comfortable and predictable routine. Over the years, they had built plans for the future, but marriage always seemed like a distant dream, something that would happen eventually, but without urgency. For Emma, the ceremony would mark the start of a new chapter, the moment when they would finally begin a life together. The wedding was the promise of a shared future, the assurance that all those years had been worth it. Ryan had always been a methodical man, averse to sudden changes. He valued the security of routine and always said he wanted everything to be perfect before taking the next step. That's why, even after so many years, he never pushed to get married. Emma, on the other hand, longed for that confirmation, that moment when they would finally build something solid together. When he finally proposed, she felt everything would be worth it. The preparations were exhausting, but Emma dedicated herself to every detail. She wanted it to be an unforgettable day. She spent months choosing the perfect dress, organizing every element of the ceremony, and making sure everyone important would be there to witness that special moment. For her, the wedding symbolized the end of the wait and the beginning of a new life with the man she loved. In the final week before the wedding, however, subtle signs began to appear. Ryan seemed distant, distracted. Always too busy to discuss the ceremony details, always avoiding conversations about the honeymoon. Emma sensed something was off, but convinced herself it was just pre-wedding nerves. After all, 15 years together meant trust, didn't it? The night before the wedding, she couldn't sleep. Her intuition whispered that something was wrong, but her logic insisted it was just anxiety. She had no idea that the next day, her life would change forever. And then, just minutes before the ceremony, everything collapsed. Emma found herself alone, dressed as a bride, standing before dozens of stunned guests. The sound of voices around her blurred into a dull hum. Her heart raced. Her breathing faltered. Her father gripped her hand tightly, trying to support her. Her mother wiped away tears, unable to find any words that made sense. The guests whispered, and the pitying looks were unbearable. That's when she made a decision. Instead of running home and hiding, she stood tall, took a deep breath, and walked to the altar. She took the microphone from the priest and, with a bitter smile, said, "Looks like today's celebration will be a little different. I was left at the altar, but that doesn't mean my life is over." There was an awkward silence. Then, a round of applause. Emma left the microphone and walked out of the church with her head held high. But inside, she was shattered. The betrayal wasn't just romantic. It was a deep breach of trust, an open wound that burned in her soul. Madison wasn't just any friend, she was the sister Emma never had, the person who stood by her through every important moment of life. Since adolescence, they had shared secrets, dreams, and even insecurities that no one else knew. Madison was the only one who knew Emma's deepest fears, the times when she doubted herself, the moments when she needed support to move forward. And now, that very same person, the one who had sworn loyalty countless times, was the woman standing beside Ryan. And Ryan wasn't just a boyfriend. He was the great love of Emma's life. From the beginning, he had been the man who promised her safety, stability, and a future together. He had a calm demeanor, always measuring his words, avoiding grand displays of affection, and Emma had come to see that as part of his reserved personality. He was the one who made her feel special, even in the most ordinary moments: walks in the park, family dinners, late-night conversations about the future they dreamed of. For 15 years, Emma believed he was her home, her safe harbor. Were there warning signs? Maybe. Small attitudes that seemed insignificant at the time, but now screamed like red flags. The way he avoided serious discussions about the wedding. How, in the last few months, he had seemed increasingly distant, always too busy with work or too tired to meet. But Emma ignored it. She wanted to believe that their love was strong enough to overcome anything. In the days that followed the wedding that never happened, Emma shut herself off from the world. Her darkened bedroom became both her refuge and her prison. The curtains blocked out the sunlight, and the non-stop messages on her phone went unanswered. Friends and family tried to comfort her, but every word of support only deepened the pain. "He didn't deserve you," they'd say. "You'll find someone better," they'd promise. But Emma didn't want to hear any of it. She just wanted the unbearable pain to stop. The worst part wasn't just the public humiliation, it was the constant exposure of her pain. Every time she opened her phone, another photo of Ryan and Madison would appear on her timeline. They were smiling in a tropical paradise, enjoying the honeymoon that was never supposed to happen. Madison's white dress in the pictures felt like a cruel provocation. Emma didn't know if she felt more anger or sorrow. Her chest burned with indignation. Then, one night, lost in thought, replaying all the years they had shared, a painful truth settled in. Ryan and Madison had stolen more than a wedding from her. They had taken her trust, her joy, her sense of identity. They had robbed her of her past, but she would not let them steal her future. She got out of bed for the first time in days. Deep down, Emma knew she needed to rise and rebuild her life. She didn't know how, but for the first time in days, she felt that maybe, just maybe, it was possible to rewrite her story. A story that belonged to her alone. The decision began to take shape inside her. Emma would not allow the betrayal of two people to destroy her life. One night, when everyone in the house was already asleep, Emma dragged herself to the bathroom as if gasping for air in the middle of an emotional shipwreck. The lights were off, but she turned on the mirror's soft glow and, for the first time in days, faced herself. Her eyes were red and sunken. Dark circles weighed down the face that once radiated life. Her hair, once shiny and styled, was tangled and messy. Her face, bare of makeup, revealed every silent pain, every hidden tear. It was like staring at a stranger. But the longer she looked, the more something began to stir. Beneath the exhaustion and heartbreak, there was a dormant presence. A deep strength, long ignored. That reflection showed just how much she had lost herself trying to please, trying to maintain a relationship that had stopped embracing her a long time ago. How many times had she silenced her voice just to avoid conflict? How many dreams had she buried to fit into what Ryan wanted? A mix of shame and indignation welled up in her chest. She had forgotten who she was. She had allowed others to define her path, her worth, her boundaries. The wedding dress still hung behind her bedroom door, a cruel reminder of what never was. But now, Emma no longer wanted to be remembered as the woman who had been abandoned. She wanted to be known as the woman who rose again. The tears came back, but this time they were different. They weren't born from pain. They came from anger. From a new hunger. From an urgent desire to take back control of her own life. Right there, in front of the mirror, Emma made a pact with herself. She didn't know how she would begin, or where to start, but one thing was clear, like steel forming in her chest, she would not let that betrayal be the end of her story. She would turn shame into strength, loss into freedom, and humiliation into fuel. She took a deep breath, wiped her face with a towel, and for the first time in a long while, managed to whisper a phrase that didn't feel empty. I will rebuild myself. Her eyes locked onto her own image, swollen, tired. But there was something there. Something deep. A flicker of determination beginning to rise. She hated how her life had been dictated by others. How she had given so much to a relationship that, in the end, left her with nothing. She no longer wanted to be the victim. Emma wanted to be strong. And it was in that moment that she made her decision, to turn her humiliation into the starting point of something greater. In the days that followed her decision in front of the mirror, Emma realized that willpower alone wasn't enough, she needed a plan. She spent hours on her computer, watching videos, reading articles, trying to find a way forward. Among so many possibilities, a memory from her teenage years surfaced, an old dream she had once tucked away for lack of courage, working in fashion. Emma had always believed that clothing was more than aesthetics. It was language, expression, armor. She remembered how powerful she felt when wearing something that represented her, even on the days when everything around her seemed to collapse. Fashion, for her, was a way to be reborn. So, she decided to create something of her own. A brand that went beyond fabrics and trends. She wanted to speak to women like herself, women who had been hurt, made invisible, but who still carried a quiet strength inside. Her dream began to take shape, but reality came knocking quickly. Emma had no money, no support, and no experience in the field. The first days were hard. She tried sketching, studying the market, brainstorming designs, but everything felt too big, too far out of reach. She stayed up late watching tutorials, scribbling ideas into old notebooks, talking through plans aloud to herself. Frustration was a constant companion. Then, during one of those sleepless nights, she stumbled upon a video on YouTube. An influencer shared her story of overcoming a traumatic divorce. She spoke about how she turned her pain into strength and built a business from her bedroom, with just a phone in hand and an idea in her heart. That lit a spark in Emma. Inspired, she decided to start with what she had. She grabbed her phone, set up some lamps for lighting, and recorded a short video. She told her story, no makeup, no script, just truth. I was left at the altar, and now I'm building an empire. I don't know how yet, but I know I will. She posted the video to a new Instagram account. The response was immediate. Messages of support, comments from people who related, shares. People saw something in her that she hadn't even recognized in herself, courage. But with the visibility came the first wave of challenges. Alongside the praise, cruel comments appeared. She just wants attention. She's being dramatic. All this for followers. Emma had to take a deep breath and realize that if she wanted to grow, she would need to learn how to filter what entered her heart. The pressure was immense. The responsibility to keep going, not to disappoint, weighed heavily. But deep down, Emma knew, this was only the beginning. With time and consistency, Emma began to reap the first rewards of her courage. Her daily posts, filled with honest reflections and behind-the-scenes glimpses of her handmade creations, started drawing attention from small brands and a growing base of loyal followers. Then, one email changed everything. It came from an independent businesswoman, the owner of a sustainable fabric shop, who had been quietly following Emma's journey for weeks. I see more than talent in you. I see truth, the message read. She offered a small partnership, to send materials so Emma could create her first capsule collection. Emma cried as she read it. For the first time, someone besides herself believed in her project. She spent days sketching, sewing, testing patterns, adjusting measurements. She turned the guest room at her parents' house into a mini studio, and that's where her first collection was born, beautiful scars, garments created for women who, like her, were in the process of rebuilding. The launch took place on Instagram and, within hours, the pieces were sold out. The comments were moving. "This outfit felt like a hug. I feel like this was made for me. Thank you for representing me." Emma realized she wasn't just selling clothes, she was telling stories, offering hope. Her brand began to grow. She was invited for interviews, participated in podcasts about female entrepreneurship, and spoke at events focused on resilience. Her image became a symbol of fresh starts and empowerment. But with recognition came real tests. Some investors began to show interest, but only with conditions. They wanted her to give up creative control. Others tried to shape her narrative, suggesting she drop the emotional aspect and focus solely on the commercial side. Emma turned them all down. Meanwhile, some of Ryan's friends, clearly bothered by her success, began mocking her online. Sarcastic comments, cruel memes, insinuations that everything was just for show. Emma felt the sting, but took a deep breath. She had faced worse. She had rebuilt herself from the ground up. She wouldn't let a handful of bitter people drag her down. She learned to filter constructive criticism and silence empty noise. With each new obstacle, her conviction grew stronger. Emma was no longer the woman crying in front of the mirror. She was now a leader, an inspiration, a voice that echoed far beyond social media. And she was just getting started. As Emma's brand grew and her constant presence on social media solidified, she became a true reference. Magazines told her story, TV programs invited her for interviews, and her name became a symbol of resilience. But with her rise came the resurfacing of old ghosts. Ryan and Madison had disappeared for months, living what seemed like a forbidden romance turned fairy tale. But the shine of a secret passion couldn't withstand time and reality. No true love can be built on foundations of lies and betrayal. Ryan was fired after becoming involved in a scandal at work. Madison, unable to bear the weight of guilt and routine, ended up getting involved with another man, leaving Ryan alone, betrayed, and resentful. It was in that context that Emma received an unexpected message. "Emma, we need to talk. Can we meet somewhere quiet?" She read the message over and over. Not out of doubt, but out of irony. The same man who had left her at the altar, who had shattered her trust, now came back with vague and regretful words. Part of her felt anger. Another part, pity. But the dominant feeling was something new, a sense of superiority. Not arrogance, but serenity. She had evolved, and he no longer belonged in her journey. Still, she decided to meet him. Not for him, for her. She wanted to look him in the eyes and close that chapter once and for all. They met at a quiet cafe, away from the spotlight. When Ryan saw her walk in, he was visibly shaken. Emma looked stunning, composed, her gaze firm and posture impeccable. He tried to explain himself. Said he was confused, lost, that he didn't know how important she was until she was gone. He spoke of regret, of longing, of wanting a second chance. But Emma remained silent, listening without a single tear, without a single interruption. When he finished, she simply smiled, placed her hands gently on the table, and said, "You taught me the most valuable lesson of my life. You showed me who I was and how much I could grow. And for that, I sincerely thank you. But there is no longer any space for you here. My life moved on. And it's better than ever." Ryan tried to insist, but Emma rose gracefully, put on her sunglasses, and walked out. There was no hatred in her heart. Only the certainty that, in that moment, she had truly won. True revenge, she now understood, was not about humiliation. It was about living well. And that, she was doing with mastery. A few days later, another name popped up on her phone screen. A name she had preferred to forget, Madison. "Emma, I need to talk to you. Can we meet for a conversation?" This time, Emma hesitated. Not out of insecurity, but out of respect for her own peace. She read the message several times, trying to identify what she felt. The anger was no longer there, but the scars of resentment still lingered. She decided to respond, briefly but firmly. Madison, I have nothing against you, but my life has moved on. I hope yours has too. She didn't need further explanations, nor apologies. She had already understood everything she needed to. Silence was her most powerful answer. Today, Emma leads a brand that goes far beyond fashion. Her name has become synonymous with authenticity, strength, and purpose. Each new collection is born with a story, a cause, a clear message. Women can reinvent themselves, no matter where they come from or what they've been through. Her company has grown on the foundation of real values, empathy, inclusion, courage, not fleeting trends. Her team is made up mostly of women, many of whom carry their own stories of resilience. Emma makes a point of knowing each team member personally, listening to their journeys, and supporting their dreams. The company's headquarters features a wall filled with photos of women wearing her designs, along with letters they've written, sharing how seen, embraced, and empowered they felt. She also founded a social project, funded by part of the brand's profits, that offers professional training and emotional support to women in vulnerable situations. I want other Emmas to have the chance to start over with dignity, she often says in interviews. But above all, Emma lives in peace with herself. Her greatest achievement isn't measured in money or fame, but in the certainty that she survived what once felt unbearable, and turned it into something meaningful. She hasn't forgotten what she went through, but she has transformed every wound into a tool for building something greater. She learned that true revenge isn't shouting to the world how much you've suffered, it's quietly showing how much you've grown. It's never too late to begin again. Sometimes, when we believe everything has ended, that's exactly when life truly begins. Have you ever had to start over after a major disappointment? How did you find the strength to move forward? If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for more inspiring stories of resilience, new beginnings, and empowerment.